It's the Thursday night matchup we've all been waiting for. The Broncos, the Saints, Sean Payton back to his old stomping grounds in the Bayou. And everybody's hurt for the Saints. That's why we're seeing this total so dang low at 37, but it is low enough. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Oh, and Trey Wingo, not in studio today. He left me. He's in New York City. All that and more coming up on the Pregame Power Up. Welcome into the Pregame Power Up presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Claudia Bellafato with Trey Wingo, although you feel so far away out there in New York City. How's the Big Apple, Trey?
Claudia, it is wonderful. It is great to be with you, even though we're separated by a few hundred miles. We're here to talk about the game and everything else that's going on. But there's also a big event happening tonight. So if you'll allow me off the top, one of the reasons I'm in New York, because tonight, what we're doing here for DraftKings is really, really fun. It's the first ever Dynasty Rewards event. It's going to be at the Marquee Nightclub, part of the Tao Group right here in New York City. If you've ever been to the Tao restaurants, mwah, chef's kiss, very, very good. It's a 2025, I want to make sure I get this right, elite gifting experience catalog with DraftKings and Golden Nugget Online Casino VIPs in attendance, as well as media and influencers. I'm not sure which one I am, but I'm one of those, Claudia, one way or the other. It's going to be a great time. The chain smokers are going to be there. We're going to have a good time. I've arranged for a private flight for you to come down after the show.
Don't tease me like that, Trey. I love Tao. Also, I do believe there's a fire alarm going on in here. You leave and all of a sudden people are lighting fires off. That's how upset they are that you're gone. Hopefully if that happens, we'll figure it out when it does. But let's talk about this game. The line moved a lot. Saints actually opened the favorite here, Trey. Yeah. 1.5 point favorite. Of course, all of these injuries came into play, which we'll talk about later. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed officially out. Derek Carr, of course, was the big one out. Spencer Rattler making his second start. So the line flipped. Broncos got to as big as a 3-point favorite. That's a key number, so no surprise, some buyback down to 2.5. But with everything the Saints are having to deal with, that feels like a really good number to me. If the Broncos don't cover that, I think they have some big problems over there in Denver.
Yeah, we'll take a much bigger sort of 10,000-foot look at what this means for Denver if they don't find a way to win this game later on tonight. But you mentioned it. What you have is a very limited wide receiving core and really offensive core for the New Orleans Saints, going up against a really good defense. And as you mentioned, led by a rookie quarterback, Spencer Rattler, making his second start. Now take a look at what we've seen from Spencer Rattler so far. Rattler is in for Derek Carr because he's still on the shelf with that oblique. Rattler looking to build on his debut last week in the team's loss to Tampa Bay, where he did throw for 243 yards, had a touchdown, but he also threw 2 picks. But it's not going to be easy for him. We'll talk about the injuries in a minute that, Claudia, you alluded to off the top. But opposing quarterbacks against this Broncos defense, to quote the great meme from Mad Men, not great, Bob. Not great at all. Here's a look at how they've fared through 6 games, averaging under 200 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. And they've been sacked 19 times. And when it comes to props, 5-1 to the under on touchdown passes and 4-2 to the under in passing yards. So what is the game plan now for Spencer Rattler going forward now that he's filling in for Derek Carr?
We ran a lot of offense in this last game. I don't think Clint's holding back at all. That wasn't our plan going into it. Obviously, each of us had to prepare at a high level in this system. So, can handle everything as a group. I think, got a lot of young guys playing this game. So, not a lot of time this week to put a ton of stuff in, but we got a lot of good stuff in. So we could open up and do whatever Clint thinks will work. We trust him. He's a great coach, great mind, and we just got to go out there and execute.
For those not in the know, the Clint he's referring to is offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. And I'm not sure what Clint has planned for the offense tonight because I'm not sure they have enough bodies. devastations with the injuries. We talked about the top two receivers out, Olave out with a concussion. Rashid Shaheed is now on injured reserve because of that knee injury, which means he's going to miss at least 4 games. And then there's the sort of Swiss Army knife, Taysom Hill, who's been such a security blanket for whoever's playing quarterback. He's out there as well, or he's not out there as well, and they're down potentially a couple of members on the offensive line. So you think, oh no, all these injuries are terrible for the Saints. There is one big injury as well for the Denver Broncos, and it is a big one. They're going to be without their one big guy, cornerback Patrick Surtain. Will miss this game with a concussion he suffered in last week's loss. Surtain is the leader of a Denver defense that ranks top 5 in multiple categories, including points allowed and total yards. But really, Claudia, with what they're going up against tonight, with who the Saints can actually put out there, they may not need him.
Yeah, Trey, and it really was only those first 2 or so weeks, 3 weeks, where the Saints looked like they were able to put up points. But ever since then, they've just been slow, injuries aside. And this is sort of historic, too, if we want to look at first in trends. Thursday Night Football totals, by the way, of 40 or less, 20-7 since 2017. They are totals of 37.5, which it is at today, or less, 5-4 this season. Saints 0-5 ATS in the last 5 Thursday Night Football games. And not only, Trey, do they not have anybody on the offensive side of the ball, but defense, too, has been lacking majorly. 4 straight losses now for them. Gave up nearly 600 yards in last week's loss to the Bucs. 5th team in NFL history to allow 300 passing yards and 275-plus rush yards in a game. As a unit, they're allowing a league-high 370 yards from missed tackles. But hey, at least we know they do care.
Pissed off.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this is not a game that you like to stomach. You turn on the film, it's like, man, you're going to look at, again, 30 or 40 plays, you're like, this is what needs to be the standard, and you're going to look at 10 or 15, like, this can never hit the tape, and yet it has. There's 5 or 6 explosive plays. Use it 5 or 6 is an obscene amount in a game.
We're not playing well defensively, and so we've got to figure out ways to play better. And when I say that, like we've got to be able to execute better. And so if you're not executing at a high level, then certainly I got to look at what we're doing and making sure I'm coaching it right, teaching it right, and not being too complicated.
And Dennis Allen, 1-10 straight up on a short rest as well. It'll certainly be a tale of 2 teams tonight, Trey. The Saints ranking towards the bottom of the league defensively, but are in top 5 offense. The Broncos, on the other hand, top 5 defensively, but towards the bottom of the league on offense. But of course, the edge goes to the Broncos here because of all of these injuries with the Saints.
Yeah, this is a really important lesson, Claudia, for us to remember that the NFL season is not a sprint. It is a marathon. Remember, the Saints came out of the gates and scored 91 points in those first 2 wins of the season. And people were floating out the idea, well, the last 2 teams to do that both went on to win the Super Bowl. The Saints in 2009 and the Dallas Cowboys in 1971 when they won Super Bowl 5. And then you played the next 4 games and they've lost 4 in a row. So just everybody pump the brakes. We understand it's going to be a long season. We're just really into October, and then we'll see how things go. So for all the injuries and what the Saints are dealing with, let's talk about that with another member of our crew. You know him, of course, has been so many teams in the NFL, played so many years. Offensive lineman, formerly played his college ball at TCU. Marshall Newhouse is with us. I refer to him as the Kincaid King from the great hamburger place off Camp Bowie in Fort Worth, Texas. So, Marshall, let's talk about these injuries. Spencer Rattler is making his second start as a rookie quarterback. No Chris Olave. No Rashid Shaheed. No Taysom Hill. And the offensive line woes as well. Of all of those injuries, which one is the biggest concern for you for this young quarterback against a really good defense?
Yeah, for me, it's the Olave injury just because I think he's more consistently getting open. And as a young quarterback, you need those kind of safety blankets. He might have found something, a guy named Bub Means, which I love, all-time name. But yeah, they're going to miss Olave. And obviously Shaheed has the deep threat, but they only take 2 or 3 shots and maybe even hit 1 a game. And so that is less important to me down to down as the Olave miss right now for Spencer Rattler, who, had an okay showing. He looked like he belonged in the first half and then Todd Bowles was like, hey, this is a rookie. I'm going to blitz you. And all of a sudden, everything fell apart. And so you need a safety blanket when you're a quarterback going through your progressions, going through your reads that you can dump the ball off to. And not having Olave, to me, seems like a bigger one.
Which Alvin Kamara becomes that safety blanket, and he has been leading the squad in catches right now. But you talked about it. Shaheed's been that deep threat, 3 touchdowns and 40-plus yards. We know what Olave is capable of. So you would think, even if you've never played defense, if you've never played football, what is the one thing the defense is going to do? Probably just do everything to stuff and keep Alvin Kamara from doing anything. So how do they move this ball when it comes to the Saints offense?
Well, normally you'd say, hey, got to get creative with the run game. I think they'll have some of that stuff in their back pocket. They're missing Cesar Ruiz, a guard, so they're depleted on that front as well. But you're going to see Clint Kubiak really utilize the experience of the play-action game and getting guys the ball in space. He's got a really creative screen game as well. And so, yeah, this is, there's a reason the under's being hit on right now. There's a reason why these two rookie quarterbacks are going against each other, and we're not expecting fireworks. But they're going to have to really put together some solid drives and not really complicate things too much. This is not going to be a big spread them out, throw it around the field game. This could be very meticulous and getting Alvin Kamara a spot that he can make an impact, even if they are singling and doubling him.
Rattler to Bubs is going to be the slogan for the Saints offense. Look, we're talking about the Saints offense because it's so injury prone, and that's why I expect it to not be good. Then there's the Denver offense, which has everybody healthy. They're just not good. Okay, let's be honest. The Denver Broncos offense has been horrendous this entire season. They have 9 touchdowns on the season, and those 9 touchdowns as the fire alarm continues in Boston. Claudia,
I don't know if you guys could hear it
right now.
I don't know if you guys could hear it. I'm trying to play
I can hear
out.
it. Trust me. We can hear it, and we appreciate your professionalism. But Marshall, to that point about the Broncos offense, they've scored 9 touchdowns. Those 9 touchdowns have traveled a grand total of 47 yards. Patrick Surtain's pick 6 a couple of weeks ago, more than double that when he had a 100-yard touchdown. Bo Nix is in bottom 5 in completion percentage, yards per attempt, and passer rating. What have you seen from Bo this season?
Listen, yeah, the numbers are what they are. I don't think anyone's expecting Bo Nix to come out there and, ceremoniously play like Drew Brees in the house of Drew Brees. But what he's doing and getting better at is protecting the ball. Yes, they're not able to, really complete a lot of passes down the field, a lot of explosive plays. But again, when you have that defense, you learn as a young quarterback, hey, I don't have to force things as often as possible. And he was very loose with the ball in the first part of the season. He shored that up a little bit. And I think his legs ultimately, is a little slept on. This Dennis Allen defense likes to play a lot of man. And him rushing has rushed to the tune of over 120 yards from the quarterback position. So I imagine he was going to do some creativity things outside the pocket, but he's just got to protect the ball. Sean Payton is a guy who's not going to dumb down his offense just because it's Bo Nix. He's going to expect this progression to him. He's going to expect Bo Nix to catch up to the level of the offense that he expects, but we're far, far, far away from that. So as long as he holds on to the ball, takes the plays that are there, even with Patrick Surtain being injured, allow your defense to really control this thing. And again, you've got a rookie quarterback on the opposite side. Don't give the game away if you're Bo Nix.
Marshall, I love to hear when you talk about a prop I just bet, and I did with Bo Nix on rush yard, so that makes me feel pretty good. Let's go back to this Saints team. Overall, we've talked about the offense, we've talked about the defense. Of course, these injuries are an issue, but 4 straight losses, regardless of who is on the field, is clear that you need to change something, whether it's in the locker room, whether it's with the quarterback situation. I mean, we'll look at Derek Carr. He was the 3rd highest pressured quarterback when he was in there. That's not great for a rookie quarterback situation. But if you had to step back and pick one thing in terms of fixing this team, what would it be?
To me, it's the head coach is Dennis Allen. He's a defensive head coach. This defense has given up 35 points in the last 3 games. Fix the defense. They have more health than the offense by a long shot. They're led by a veteran Cam Jordan, Brian Bresee, guys inside, Carl Granderson. I think the defense has to come to play before you can expect injured and led by Spencer Rattler offense to somehow save you this season. If you're the head coach and your defense is slant, your defensive mindset is your slant as a defensive coordinator, or ex-defensive coordinator, it's got to fix on the defensive side.
All right, Marshall Newhouse, the Sultan of the Stockyards, thanks very much. We'll check back with you a little bit later on in this edition of the pregame. It's okay to smile, Marshall. It's okay to smile. We're all good here. First game back in New Orleans for Sean Payton since he left the team in 2022. We'll hear how he's handling the emotions of tonight and talk about how he's looked with quarterbacks not named Drew Brees in his career. Stay with us. Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. We continue on the pregame power-up presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal, and Sean Payton's return game. Doesn't mean much when it comes to betting, but it is a narrative that can't be ignored. Payton, as you know, spent 15 seasons with the Saints, the most games coached, most wins, and highest winning percentage in franchise history. They will also be honoring his quarterback at halftime as Drew Brees will be inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame. And here's a look at the credentials for Sean Payton. Won the only Super Bowl in team history over the Colts 14 years ago. Had the greatest surprise onside in the history of the Super Bowl. So, of course, let's get rid of that rule and tell people we have to tell them when we're going for the onside kick. Ridiculous. He was the AP Coach of the Year in 2006. 9 playoff wins with the team. Jim Haslett is the only other Saints coach that has any playoff wins. He has one of them. And Payton admits it's going to be an emotional game, but the short week has helped him stay focused.
On a short week, there just isn't enough time in the day. And I'm sure there'll be some emotions at some point, but more importantly, it's about our team. And, because really, we go to stadiums with players that, man, this means something to me. I used to be a Chief or Charger, Raider or Eagle, and to that individual, having spent time there, that matters. And so But I think because of the week and because of the schedule, I haven't really had a chance to. I mean, I get it, but what's most important is finding a way to win.
And they've done that, even though it hasn't really been about the quarterback, because Sean has always been thought of as this offensive guru. Tough to not have Drew Brees as your quarterback. And here's a look at the two guys Payton has worked with since taking over in Denver. Russell Wilson actually with better numbers through his first 6 games, but the only numbers that matter, 1 and 5. Brees won 2008 and 2011 Offensive Player of the Year award under Sean Payton. We'll see what he can do with Bo Nix. And, it was somewhat of a surprise, Claudia, when the Denver Broncos went with Bo Nix in the draft. I mean, this was the most ridiculous in terms of quarterback selections and the frequency and how early they were in draft history. We had 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. The last time we had 6 quarterbacks was 1983. And, they didn't get till the end of the 20s before they finally took all those quarterbacks. So it was somewhat surprising how fast the quarterbacks went in this year's draft. And a lot of people were surprised that the Denver Broncos really focused on Bo Nix that fast.
Yeah, it was definitely surprising. It definitely felt early, and I think we're all right to criticize the offense for not being very explosive. They're certainly more successful. I know.
Well, they're not good. They're certainly not good.
But Trey, I mean, if we look at what Bo Nix has done, right? Of course, they're not leaning on him. You can't really lean on him, but he has progressed, I think, over the last, 3 games, 5 touchdowns. Luckily, he's not getting much pressure on him, just 9 sacks, top 5 pass protection. So I think that means a lot to it. But we've seen him enough in college. He played plenty of college games to know he's a capable quarterback. He's not going to be, your franchise standout guy, but he's a capable quarterback that can run this offense as long as you get a strong run game going and you have a great defense like the Broncos do right now. You don't need him to be amazing.
They do. No, you don't need him to carry the team, but with all the injuries, Claudia, it sure looks like there will be one offensive player that the Saints are going to need to carry them tonight.
Yeah, and it should be easy. It should be easy for this Broncos defense because it's all Alvin Kamara. He leads the Saints with 428 rush yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, 28 catches. He actually leads the whole entire league in touches, and he's 3rd in scrimmage yards. But one thing he does the most is actually the one thing Denver is good at stopping. Take a look at our next-gen matchup for tonight. It's Kamara running to the outside. The Saints have rushed outside the tackles over 72% of the time. That's the second most in the NFL. But the Broncos are second best at stopping it, a negative 16.6 EPA, according to next-gen stats. With even more focus on Kamara, it should be tough sledding on the ground for the Saints running back tonight. And of course, is a huge part of the passing game, so I'm sure they will adjust accordingly there. Let's take a look at how some people are betting this one. Bets are pretty even on the spread tonight. We're seeing 77% of the handle, though, on the Broncos to cover. So the Sharps are liking the Broncos to cover, like I said, a number that they very much should, under that key number of 3. We're seeing the bets on the over, some of the handle on the over as well. And then, to no surprise, Alvin Kamara over on catches, the most bet prop tonight. For more on what the book is scared of people cashing in terms of liability tonight, here's Captain Book.
It's Thursday night, baby. Into the Crescent City we go. Mardi Gras is 4 months away, but Halloween's almost here, and that means the carnival's already begun. Drew Brees is back in the Big Easy as the Chopper City legend will receive his rightful induction into the team's Hall of Fame at halftime. With his old coach back at the Benz, what better way to make Saints fans weep than remembering the good old days? Since going their separate ways, both Sean Payton and the Saints have struggled. But in this matchup tonight, bettors are backing the Broncos big, as both the handle and tickets are a mile high on the visitors. That action, combined with New Orleans' mass unit on offense, flipped this number from the Saints being favored to now New Orleans catching nearly a field goal. Dennis Allen is 41% ATS as a head coach in his career, but with his job on the line, it's make or break now for DA and the Saints. And with Hunter Moon in full effect, what better time to let Spencer Rattler roll? Bring it on, Broncos. Captain Book can't wait.
Claudia, I think it's safe to say as the season continues and the episodes of Pregame PowerUp Draft Up, Captain Book feels himself
He's feeling
more
himself,
and more
man.
every week.
He really is. I love it, though. Keep it up, Captain
I respect it. He is he has embraced the role in the way that we hoped he would.
Yeah,
so we'll see what happens, and he just let us know what they're afraid of. So for more on what we expect tonight, let's bring in former NFL wide receiver Mike Pritchard, spent 2 years with Denver from the DraftKings trading floor in Las Vegas. Mike, let's talk about familiarity here, because Dennis Allen and Sean Payton know each other very well. When they were together in New Orleans, Sean was the head coach, Dennis was his defensive coordinator. How much of a factor do you think that dynamic is tonight in the terms of how this game is going to play out and the cat and mouse effect they might have with each other?
You know, Trey, familiarity is everything. I mean, you try to get edges if you can. This game is based off of tendencies as well. So if you know your opponent based on tendencies, you feel pretty confident about your game plan, right? And so I think it's incumbent upon Dennis Allen to change up his tendencies, and same thing with Sean Payton to kind of change up their tendencies throughout this game. But I think the crux of the matter, though, is can they do it, though, without the players, like the playmakers, like Clint Kubiak needs on offense there for New Orleans. So I think right now Denver is so offensively challenged that it probably doesn't matter. I think Sean Payton's in his comfort zone with his quarterback, Bo Nix. But I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit with you because I dove deeper into this game. And so if you look at Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for Denver, and then Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Saints, I mean, there's a ton of familiarity right there based on Gary Kubiak, right? And so that is another element of this game that I'm going to watch. Absolutely going to watch that element as this game develops.
We love Pritch digging deep for these games. The Saints are going to have to dig deep into their playbook because I don't know what they're going to do. We talked about the Broncos being able to stop the one thing Kamara's good at, and that's running outside the tackles. But, of course, he's been a huge part of this passing game. 20 routes ran out of the slot this season, 9 targets, 8 catches for 75 yards. How much of Kamara are you expecting in the passing game, and how much success can they really have with that? Because the defense probably knows where they're going to go with it.
Right, Claudia. I mean, I think if you're Dennis Allen, you're going to go up to Kamara and say, look, you're going to get a ton of rest this weekend. You're going to get extra rest before our next game. We're going to use you tonight. And you're right about the outside zone. Vance Joseph, Denver Broncos, so familiar with that outside zone with Clint Kubiak and that West Coast offense. They're going to try to stop that if they can. Now, can Dennis Allen, can Clint Kubiak get to more gap schemes? Can they get to, more screen game with Kamara? Can they split him out? And get him matched up on a linebacker, be creative with formations and personnel. I mean, that to me is what the game plan should be, right? But again, can they get to that? Do they have the personnel and the capability to get to those adjustments there?
Pritch, I'm really glad you mentioned Vance Joseph because, last year when they gave up 70 to the Miami Dolphins, people are like, you got to get Vance Joseph out of here. He doesn't know what he's doing. And kudos to Vance for finding a way to turn it around. And, oh, by the way, doing it for a team where he used to be the head coach. A lot of players or a lot of coaches would not have the humility to go back and say, yeah, I was the head coach here. I'll go back as a coordinator. So a tip of the cap to Vance Joseph on that front. But let's talk about Bo Nix. We already sort of displayed that it hasn't been a really good start for him in the way he's played. And one thing they can help him is to run the ball more because they're 3-0 when they run it more than 26 times, 0-3 when they run it less than 26 times. And that's a simple number. Well, just run it more. No, game situations dictate that a lot. How do you expect them to attack what has been a porous New Orleans defense the last few weeks?
Well, Trey, they have to run the football. I mean, Bo Nix, he's completed 58 passes beyond 10 yards out of 121 completions. I mean, he is vertically challenged, if you ask me. But, in terms of running the football, it sets up play action, right? It sets up the 1 or 2 options that Bo Nix, or even 3 options that Bo Nix will have. Find the open guy if you can on a play action. If it's not there, throw it away or use your legs. I think Newhouse talked about this earlier. I think both quarterbacks in prime time are going to use their legs tonight just because of the options that are going to be presented to them out there with both offenses.
Yeah, and Rattler having some injuries on that O-line as well, so a couple scrambles certainly in his future. All right, you know where I'm going with this, Pritch. I got to ask you, are you backing the dog tonight? The public likes the Saints, the Sharps like the Broncos. Which way are you going?
Well, Claudia, the old school better in me would tease this game. Certainly, I would try to do that, right? And certainly, I'd find a partner on the weekend. There's a couple of candidates that I've looked at. I have not bet this game because I'm scared. This thing has preseason written all over it for me with all these backups out there, right? I think it could be sloppy or it could be exciting. And there's so many variables in this game. But if you ask me, I'd lean towards the Broncos, laying at 2.5. You look at the total right now. If it does get sloppy, there's a chance that this thing can go under. But again, I'm not touching this game yet. But the old school guy would love to tease this game and certainly find a partner right there on the weekend.
I love me some teasers getting up over a touchdown. But,
Yeah.
Rich, if the Broncos don't cover 2.5, what does that say about this squad when the Saints have nobody healthy? Alvin Kamara is the only healthy weapon they have. What does that say about Denver?
Well, the Broncos are rebuilding. I mean, I think they're true to themselves, Claudia, in the building. And that's why we've seen the brakes put on Bo Nix. They don't want this guy to lose any confidence. They don't want this guy to not develop, right? Because they're looking at the end game with Bo Nix. They're looking at the long-term situation with their quarterback. They don't want to ruin him. And so, therefore, they're highly conservative with Bo Nix and letting that defense eat out there and letting that defense win games for them as well. So I think they're going to lean on that defense, even though Patrick Surtain's not out there. They still have enough playmakers and capability to kind of slow down a depleted Saints offense.
Pritch, I know you don't want to really get into this game and it scares you, but when you talk about the lack of weapons for the Saints on offense and the inability of the Denver Broncos to put any sort of consistent offensive product out there, the total is 37. I mean, you
Right.
got to be looking at that as like this could be a really, really low-scoring game.
Absolutely. And like I said, there's so many variables, Trey. I mean, if I was old school again, I mean, just turning back the clock here, okay, let me tease down that total as well. But I'm not going to do that, right? I mean, again, I could get hurt if I did something like that. I'd rather find a partner like a Steelers at home, a home dog situation, or even the Chiefs catching a few points on the road against San Francisco. So there's some candidates out there that you can find if you like the dog situation and certainly want to get through 2 possessions. And that's what I normally try to look for when I'm looking for a teaser candidate. But if you're just picking a side, I mean, you got to go with the Broncos. And that's the way I lean. I lean with the Broncos covering this game by a field goal.
Well, you mentioned the Chiefs. We'll have some interesting conversations about them and their opponent coming up a little bit later on the show. Pritch, always good to talk to you. Thanks, my man.
Thank you. Have a great night.
I love that he's talking about teasers, Trey. That makes it so much more fun.
Yeah.
Because I would never, in any world, take 2.5. But if you get it up over a touchdown, I still wouldn't bet it. But I see what he's saying. But I do see what he's saying. Still wouldn't bet it.
It just makes more sense that way.
Yeah. There were 137 picks between Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler, but tonight they meet up on the same field, something they never did in college. We'll dive more into this rookie quarterback matchup. That's next on the Pregame PowerUp.
Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.
it's cool to be able to go out there and be on the same field as Bo. You know, obviously coming out, same class in high school, been around each other since high school, you know, competing at camps and stuff like that. So excited to go out there and play.
Pregame PowerUp presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. That was Spencer Rattler on the familiarity he has with the opposing quarterback tonight. And if you like experience, these are your rookies. These are the guys you want. Bo was selected 12th overall in the 2024 draft class. He was the 6th quarterback, as we said. Spencer Rattler was the next quarterback taken. 150th overall, 137 picks between quarterback selections was the largest drought in the common draft era that goes back to 1967. And coming out of high school, Rattler was the top-rated quarterback in the nation in the 2019 class, and Nix was the second-ranked quarterback. And they played a lot in college. I mean, these numbers are ridiculous. Nix came into the NFL with a lot more reps. He set an NCAA record with 61 starts for both Auburn and Oregon. Rattler played plenty between Oklahoma and South Carolina with 48 starts, but they never ended up facing each other in college. For more on these two and their transition from college to the NFL, let's bring in the one and only, the Emerson Lazio.
Thank you very much, Trey. Appreciate it. On paper, this game looks like it could be trash tonight, but we don't care what the paper says. Hopefully, it delivers in the theatrics department, which there's a chance it doesn't do that either. But we have 4 to 5 minutes to fill right now, so we're going to bring in one of the best talkers I know, Mike Golic Jr., who is obsessed with college football. He knows these two rookie quarterbacks well, Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler. What did these guys do well in college, Gojo?
Yeah, I was fortunate to get to cover both of these guys during their time in college. Very different skill sets, starting with Bo Nix. He's a guy who we rode the roller coaster with early on, right? Auburn Bo Nix was a very different experience than Oregon Bo Nix. And I think the thing they were able to weaponize was some of that playmaking ability in a little bit more structure at Oregon. He did well playing point guard in that offense. Now, I know a lot of people were critical because he didn't push the ball downfield as much as some of those other prospects, but he bought time. He created plays in the short and intermediate in that offense, and then made the downfield throws when they presented themselves. And he's also very poised. It comes with a guy that started as many games as he did in offense. He was never really flustered by a lot of situations in those last 2 years at Oregon, and I think that's translated early in the NFL. Conversely, for Spencer Rattler, what jumps off the page right away is the arm. I got to call the game at the beginning of the 2022 season where it was, 2023 season, where it was him against Drake May on the other side there at North Carolina. Drake May, a little bit more of the archer, able to feather throws in at different layers all over the field. Great touch. Spencer Rattler, he's got a cannon strapped to his shoulder. You combine that with his ability to operate under duress, something he had to do pretty often at South Carolina where protection wasn't always afforded to him. I think that's going to be huge, and you saw it in game one for him, going out and getting the start behind a beat-up Saints offensive line. They put him on the move. He had to operate under fire, and so I think both of those guys have definite strengths that each team and each coaching staff can work with.
Yeah, I think the second half of that game against the Bucs was a little bit of a damper on what was otherwise a strong showing by Rattler, and I believe you said recently on Gojo and Golic here that you've seen more from Rattler in one start than you have from Nix in his 6 games. So what is it exactly that you liked from Rattler in that game against the Bucs last weekend?
Yeah, and I'll heat check myself a little bit on that, and I want to give some grace to Bo Nix, who's been a great scrambler since he's gotten into the NFL, but it's been a similar thing where there hasn't been a lot of opportunities for him downfield. Some of that has been misfires by receivers. Others have been misfires by him as a quarterback who just isn't as physically gifted as the rest of his peers from this draft class, and that includes Spencer Rattler, who, while he was drafted further down the list, I would argue has more in terms of physical tools to work with, and I think you saw some of those on display. The arm strength to fit the ball into some tough places. It took him a while. At the beginning of that game, it was a lot of throwing on the run, moving the pocket to get him out from behind a beat-up offensive line. But you saw as the game went on, he got a little bit more comfortable trying to fit into some tight spaces. That turned into some second-half turnovers. That game got away from them in a really wild one against Tampa Bay. It was an uphill battle in a game where he also lost his best receiver, another guy he'll be without tonight with Chris Olave down with that concussion. So I think it's just that the physical gifts from a guy in Spencer Rattler, who's always been a talented quarterback, trying to thrive in a situation that's less than ideal for him right now.
Okay, so then just the team overall, when you consider the team, the location, personnel, all that jazz, Who do you anticipate having a better NFL career between these two guys?
I mean, I think Bo Nix is going to get more opportunities just by nature of being a first rounder. That's generally how this tends to work. And we know with New Orleans, in an ideal world, if Derek Carr can come back at some points this season, he would continue to be their quarterback. Spencer's got a great opportunity because he gets the chance to put reps on tape. But we also know with no Rashid Shaheed, with no Chris Olave, with multiple members of this offensive line down and Taysom Hill, he's not exactly set up to succeed in a way that gets you more reps if you're a guy that came into the league with the draft capital attached to him. So I think Bo Nix is going to have more opportunities to be successful and is a savvy enough guy to hopefully take advantage of that and give himself a good chance to stick around the league. I don't know how much I buy into high-end success as something I would predict in his future, but he's got an opportunity because, like most first-rounders, he's going to get plenty of chances to go out there and prove people right.
Mike Golick Jr. of Gojo and Golick, which you can catch here weekday mornings, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock Eastern Time on DraftKings Network. Is there anything you can tease ahead for tomorrow's show, Friday morning? What do you got?
Yeah, check us out Friday morning. Harrison Smith, Minnesota Vikings star safety, going to join us and talk about some of the keys to the top defense in the NFL. That's been one of the biggest stories for the undefeated Vikings so far this year.
You are a pros pro, Gojo. I look forward to exchanging more memes with you on Instagram. Yes, heart, you mean it. Okay, that's it for me and Gojo in this studio. Trey, back to you.
Emerson, Gojo, thanks very much. We appreciate it. And one of the things that both of these quarterbacks are doing well heading into this game is getting out of the pocket. Bo Nix has the second highest designed rollout rate among qualified quarterbacks this season. Meanwhile, Rattler got outside the pocket 25% of the time last week against the Buccaneers, which would put him first on this list if he had enough qualified snaps. It's certainly part of the Saints' offensive scheme. As you see, Derek Carr is on this list as well. Claudia?
Yes, Trey, and I know you're very excited for this game, but it's not like we didn't have any excitement this week. We had Devontae Adams reuniting with his old pal Aaron Rodgers in New York. The Raiders sending Adams to the Jets for a conditional third-round pick in 2025. Rodgers and Adams, good old pals, played together from 2014 to 2021 in Green Bay, amassing more targets, catches, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns than any other duo in that span. But just a few hours later, the Bills came out, swung a trade with the Browns for Amari Cooper, trading a 3rd and 7th to Cleveland for Cooper and a 6th rounder. It's the 3rd time Cooper has been traded in his career. He was averaging a career low 41.7 receiving yards per game so far. That was, of course, with Deshaun Watson. So he's surely hoping Josh Allen doesn't forget how to throw the football. Here's a look at how the odds in the division changed with as divisional favorites, but after their slow start and Week 6 loss to the Bills, the odds flipped dramatically, Trey. Bettors definitely loving this Adams trade, though, because since then, the Jets are the most bet team to win the division, the odds being pushed down from 7-1 to its current price at plus 425. And plus 425, I know I'm assuming, you're shaking your head now. I'm assuming you're going to disagree with me. But of these two trades, that feels like way too expensive of a price for a Bill squad. I get it. Amari Cooper is a great extra threat for Josh Allen. But look at all of the receivers that Aaron Rodgers has, and you have the defense with the Jets. Why are you shaking your head?
Okay. Well, the defense of the Jets, the defense of the Jets is a unit I would like to sell them for what they think they're worth and buy them for what they're actually worth. Okay? Let's be honest, that Jets defense, that vaunted Jets defense, they're, oh, just give me Aaron Rodgers with this Jets defense and we'll be fine. No, the Jets defense, I mean, the Bills with a backup running back ran all over them when they wanted to in that last game that they played on Monday night. So for all this talk about the vaunted Jets defense, it has not shown up so far in 2024.
Okay, that's fair enough, I guess. But on paper, hey, I will say, odds makers Vegas usually know a thing. They probably would not price the Jets the way they were, even with the Rodgers and Adams trade, if it wasn't for a reason. So, whatever. I guess you're right, Trey.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. And then there's blocking issues. Like, is Devontae Adams going to block for the Jets? Because that seems to be a big problem for them as well. But who am I to talk about blocking, Claudia, when we can bring in someone who did this for a living a long time in the NFL? Let's bring back our big hoss, the hero of the Hewlin Mall, none other than Marshall Newhouse. Marshall, first of all, we might as well just call the Jets the New York Aaron's. Let's just be honest about it. He is running everything there, okay? And I thought it was a really interesting exchange with him on the Pat McAfee show when he was asked about, once again, the post-game press conference where Mike Williams was supposed to run to the red line, which is a specific spot on the field, and Aaron basically tossed him under the bus. And Pat McAfee, of all people, Pat, whom I love, but is obviously a very pro-Aaron Rodgers guy because he gets him on the show, and when Aaron goes on the show, it's good for the show and ratings. He basically had to say to Aaron, dude, you got to give a canned answer right there. You can't just say, yeah, that guy ran the wrong route. Because now, what do we have? We have Mike Williams missing practice because of a personal reason. He's probably going to be traded anyway. The point being, do we have too much control of the New York Jets organization with one guy right now?
Yeah, maybe. I think that maybe they should just offer more money because he's acting like the GM and the team president and the offensive coordinator, as well as being the quarterback.
And the coach.
And the coach. And listen, Aaron is the guy, when I played with him with the Packers, he held guys accountable, and you understood that he wasn't doing it for no reason. He did it because he's an ultimate competitor, and you respected him for that. But there is a level of tact as a leader when you want to convey a message to get a guy to do what you need him to do. And so that whole red line thing has been broken down ad nauseum. But yeah, you definitely felt like that was an unnecessarily public way of getting the information out of what happened on that last play for the Jets. But yeah, this Devontae Adams trade is maybe the worst kept secret for the last year. They've been openly flirting with each other. And as soon as the Raiders decided they weren't going to go get a quarterback of note in the offseason, you knew that more than likely Devontae Adams wasn't going to have a guy who could throw him the ball as accurately and as consistently enough for him to produce the way he wanted to. And so I get that this makes sense. I get that the Jets are just like, hey, we're already all in with Aaron. Why not go even more all in? I think there will be a better offense. You can't double team Garrett Wilson now. I mean, it's going to open the entire field up, which will alleviate some of the stress on this offensive line. They're still going to have to block, but there will be, I think, more production on the offensive side of the ball. This doesn't cure everything for the defense. But I think, in a lot of these games, they've been very close games. And if you could put a Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, their mind meld, psychic, connection, maybe that accounts for 4 or 6 more points a game, and maybe they are more of a playoff contender. So I like the move. It's just everything around it. It just feels messy. It feels weird. But ultimately, if they win, but this is still the Jets. That Jetsian nature is what's always folded into the mix, and you just never know what you're going to get.
Yes, that is true. And that's why I was saying they're getting no respect when it comes to the division odds because all of that. But you mentioned it. Now you can't double Wilson. You also have Lazard, who's been one of his favorite targets because Rodgers knows him just as well. So I feel like maybe you agree with me a bit more, giving the Jets more respect. Like maybe there is some value outside of the defensive issues. We can all argue about that some other time. So that was not a surprise. We all knew this was coming, right? When Rodgers entered this team, we knew Vegas was going to be a mess. The Amari Cooper move, though, I certainly didn't expect. I'm curious how surprised you were, and what do you expect this offense to look like? The chemistry Adams and Rodgers already have, but is there going to be some time that they're going to have to make up between Cooper and Josh Allen?
There will be a little time, but Amari Cooper, Josh Allen are veterans. That's something that they'll figure out behind the scenes pretty quickly, and they'll give him some basic things to do, just get the ball in his hands earlier on in the first game. But I'm just shocked that he got to escape the sinking ship that is the Cleveland Browns. So you're kind of happy for a guy like Amari Cooper, who he's always been traded away. If you think about this, how many times he's hit free agency, it's been very few times just from circumstance. And so I'd like to see him in a position, which I think the Buffalo Bills are, in a place that he might be able to thrive and help a winning playoff caliber team. And so Josh Allen, he's lost guys like Khalil Shakir, and he's lost production. I thought that they would lean more on the tight ends. They don't feel like that's been as much of a connection. So this Amari Cooper thing, I think, can work well for them within the confines of Josh Allen running the offense.
Yeah, Amari Cooper is a professional route runner, no question. Marshall, as always, my man, thanks very much. Coming up, it's going to be slim pickings for TD scores on this Saints squad tonight, but Spencer Rattler did find some chemistry with one guy last week. Can he find the end zone again? And let's see what our fantastic felines are going with here. Next Gen Cats for the first touchdown to score tonight. Who do we got?
Big leap.
poking around, looking.
Little Halloween vibe.
It's Bubs.
Bob means.
Rattler to Bubs. Rattler to Bubs.
Stop giving
Put
the
it down in
catnip.
Saints history.
Stop with the catnip. Welcome back to Pregame Power Up. Trey, Claudia with you, presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Here's what bettors like for an anytime touchdown tonight. Kamara, surprise, surprise, actually pretty cheap though for minus 115. Javonte Williams, Sutton, who we haven't really talked about. Bo Nix, I will say I do have a ticket on that man to score a teddy. Plus 210. And Bub Means, if anybody was wondering, plus 350. Anytime touchdown. For more on what bettors like tonight, here's DKN social media correspondent Megan Townley.
Alrighty, so tonight we're rolling with two rookie quarterbacks, and it's kind of obvious in the DraftKings Sportsbook betting groups that these bettors are leaning in one direction over the other. So let's start with Nick Fryer in the DK Network betting group. He built a same game parlay with two legs, kicking it off with Broncos money line and then also Alvin Kamara over 36.5 receiving yards. Yeah, the list for New Orleans injuries is so depressing right now that Alvin Kamara will be running back one, but he also could be wide receiver one, except shout out Bub Means. So I did say that these bets are kind of leaning in the same direction in these groups. We got a lot of Broncos money line and a lot of Alvin Kamara to hit over whichever yards you choose. But Chris Clemmer from Barstool, he's taking it in a bit of a different direction. He likes the Saints to cover +3 spread alternate. And honestly, it's Spencer Rattler time, rooting for a close game. So hey, if it happens, I'm here for it. But if you don't think that the Saints are going to cover or you don't want to take Broncos money line, go ahead and check out these groups for yourself. And to find them, you can open up the DraftKings Sportsbook, click on the social tab at the top, and then hit betting groups. And make sure you go and open them before the game kicks off tonight, because I'm telling you, after scrolling through this, the Saints, they need some love.
People are liking.
They need some wide receivers. Right? Megan, thank you. They need some wide receivers. Is what they really need.
A lot of people might be wondering who even is Bub Means and why are we talking about him. He did score a touchdown last week, people. Okay, 5 catches on 8 targets, 45 yards. So I wouldn't bet it, but I understand why people are.
All right. Actually, here's an interesting one for you, Claudia. Spencer Rattler threw a touchdown pass last week as a rookie starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Only one rookie quarterback in Saints franchise history has a game with 2 touchdown passes. Do you know who it is?
No.
Take a guess. Do you want to take a flyer?
No, I have no idea.
Any ideas?
No.
None?
No.
Archie Manning.
Oh, yeah.
Archie Manning, the father
Okay.
of
I
Payton
wouldn't
and
have
Eli,
guessed
and the grandfather of Arch Manning, who's now playing quarterback for the University of Texas. In 1971, is the only Saints rookie quarterback to throw 2 touchdown passes in a game in Saints franchise history, and with the absolute lack of depth at wide receiver. By the way, they just turned up the heat in here. I love you guys. Thank you very much. It went from a curing meat fridge to now it's a barbecue pit in here. I should have said something earlier. This is wonderful.
Once. You sent him to New York City once. He's like, it's too hot. It's too cold. Please. Well, I do want to say.
Why don't you go trip another fire alarm? Okay, this is what happens when you smoke in the break room,
too
Claudia.
There,
this is what happens when you smoke in the break room, Claudia.
Man.
You're not supposed to do that.
Trey, I do want to shout out this one trend before we go, because I know it's one you and I both think is going to end tonight. All right. Head coaches in their first road game against a former team of 10+ seasons are 1-6 in that initial road game since 2000. The only win, let me ask you this. Only win, can you guess who? What coach? It was 2013 against
Since 2000? Well,
since 2000.
Oh. All right, 20. Okay, so repeat that qualifier again. Repeat that qualifier again.
Head coach up against a former team of 10+ seasons, first road game. The only coach to win. He's pretty good at winning, and he has basically it's this team I can't stand because all they do is win regardless.
Is it Andy Reid?
Yes. 2013 in Philly.
Bingo.
Bingo wingo.
It's like I've done this before. Hey, Claudia, listen, I want you to have a great night tonight when you go home to your Uber Eats and your cats. I'm going to go to a nightclub here in New York and hang out with the chain smokers and the VIPs for DraftKings.
Whatever.
I was told your I was told your invitation was in the mail. So there you go. It's coming by UPSP. It'll be there. It'll be there next week, I'm sure. Thanks for watching Pregame Power. I can't wait to see you Monday.